My mom still won't take the trash out after dark. She'll stand at the back door with the bag in her hands like it weighs 100 pounds, staring at the tree line like she's waiting for something to blink at her. If you ask her what she's looking at, she'll say nothing. If you push, she'll get pissed real fast and tell you to mind your business. And if you make the mistake of joking about the boots, she'll go quiet in a way that makes your skin crawl. Because the boots that carried me out of the woods weren't hers. I didn't tell this story for a long time because it's the kind of memory that doesn't stay put. It shifts. It comes back sharper on random days. Like a splinter you can't dig out, and you keep catching it on everything. But I'm older now, and I've learned that the scariest part isn't the thing in the woods. It's the part where you realize you did exactly what it wanted, and you did it because it sounded nice. When I was 8, my brother Phil was 5. We lived in one of those neighborhoods that pretends it's not right next to wilderness. Cookie-cutter houses, identical mailboxes, kids everywhere. And then, at the end of the street, trees. Not decorative trees, real ones. A messy wall of pine and bare branches and underbrush that started behind the last row of backyards and just kept going. The woods were close enough that snow drifts would push up against the fence in winter, like the forest was breathing cold air into the neighborhood. That Saturday, the snow came in hard. Not the cute, fluffy kind. It dumped and dumped until the street looked like it had been erased. Cars turned into lumpy shapes. Sound got swallowed. You could shout, and it felt like the snow ate it before it traveled 10 feet. My mom worked late Fridays. She did that thing where she'd come home exhausted but wired, like her body wanted to collapse and her brain refused to let it. She'd fall asleep sitting up sometimes, chin dropping to her chest while she pretended she wasn't tired. That morning she was moving slow, hair thrown into a knot, old sweatshirt, dark circles under her eyes. She still made us oatmeal and cut up apples and told us, "Yeah, you can go outside, but don't be stupid." Before we went out, she slapped a piece of paper on the fridge with a magnet. It was bright orange, like she'd torn it from a legal pad and then highlighted the hell out of it. She wrote in big block letters like we were illiterate. I can still see it. That's the thing. I don't remember what I got for my 9th birthday, but I remember that paper. It said, "Rule 1. If you can't see the porch light, you're too far. Turn around. Rule 2. If someone calls your name from the trees, you do not answer. You come to the house. Rule 3. Never go past the last fence post. Not even just a little. Rule 4. If you drop a glove or a hat near the woods, leave it. You come get Mom. Rule 5. If you hear a bell or a jingle, you come inside. No arguing. Rule 6. If you see a blinking light, wave and stay where you are. I will come to you. Rule 7. If Phil cries, you bring him to me. I don't care what you're building." Rule 6 was the one that seemed harmless, almost comforting, like, "Hey, if you get lost, just wave, we'll find you." Rule 5 felt random. A bell? A jingle? We lived in a normal neighborhood. It wasn't like we had reindeer or ice cream trucks in the snow. Mom's mouth was a straight line when she put it up. Like it wasn't a cute mom rules thing. Like she'd written it because she'd already imagined the worst case and she was trying to jam a wedge in the door before it happened. She made me read them out loud, like a damn pledge. Phil got annoyed halfway through and tried to wander off. Mom snapped his name and he froze. He was little, but he had that stubborn streak. He'd look you dead in the eyes and do the exact opposite of what you wanted if he thought he could get away with it. I remember saying, "We get it, Mom," with that older kid tone that makes you want to smack your own face when you hear it later. She pointed at Rule 5 with the tip of her finger, hard. Especially that one. "What bell?" I asked. She stared at me for a second too long. Then she said, "Just don't." That was the explanation. We went outside anyway, because it was Saturday and the snow was perfect for building stuff and being loud. The front yard looked like a blank sheet of paper. Everything felt new and quiet. Phil ran straight into the deep snow and face-planted because he was 5 and thought he was invincible. He popped up laughing with snow in his eyebrows and down his collar. He had on this bright yellow winter jacket with white fur around the hood. Mom had bought it on purpose because he was small and fast and had a gift for vanishing the second you blinked. Yellow was basically a safety feature. I had on a black coat with a red stripe. Nothing special. I looked like every other kid in winter. We split up because we were both little dictators with our own visions. I started building a snowman near the driveway. Phil went closer to the porch and did that thing kids do where they flop around and make snow angels, except his were always lopsided because he'd get distracted halfway through and start kicking. I could see Mom through the front window. She was moving around the kitchen like her limbs were heavy. Every few seconds, she'd stop and lean both hands on the counter, eyes closed, like she was trying to steal a nap standing up. I got obsessed with my snowman. Not the cute kind. I wanted it tall and ugly and menacing. I packed snow hard, stacked it, shoved rocks in for eyes, crooked sticks for arms. It looked like a little gang member. Then I realized it needed a nose. A carrot. The cliché. The essential piece. And I realized we didn't have one out there because I'd forgotten to bring them. I turned and shouted, "Phil, go ask Mom for a couple carrots." No answer. Just the quiet of snow. I shouted again. "Phil." Still nothing. I looked toward the porch and saw his snow angel, but I didn't see him. It's hard to explain how fast panic hits when you're a kid and you think you're responsible. It's not logical. It's not like adult worry. It's instant. It's a drop in your stomach like you stepped off something. I trudged through the snow toward the porch, scanning, calling his name. My boots crunched loud. I rounded the snow angel, and he wasn't behind it. I checked the side of the house, the bushes. Nothing. Then I saw movement near the back fence, the one that separated our yard from the strip of trees. A flash of yellow. Phil's jacket. He was heading toward the woods like he had a purpose. Not running wild like he usually did. Walking steady, which was somehow worse. "Phil!" I yelled louder. My voice sounded muffled, like the snow was smothering it. He didn't react. I sprinted, slipping, arms windmilling. "Phil, stop." He kept going. The fence line had these posts, old wooden ones that marked where the yard ended and the rough land started. We weren't supposed to go past the last post. That was rule 3. The post was darker, weathered, with a little notch in it that kids had scratched years ago. Phil stepped past it like it wasn't even there. I jumped the drift and grabbed his sleeve. He didn't jerk away like I expected. He didn't even look annoyed. He just turned his head slightly toward the trees, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then I heard it, a sound that made absolutely no sense in that place. It was like a toy commercial jingle, thin and bright. A fluttery, tinkling little rhythm, like tiny bells hitting glass. Too cheerful, too clean, like it belonged inside a TV, not outside in a dead, frozen forest. Then, layered under it, laughter. Not a person's laugh, not even a kid's. A high, sharp giggle that cut off too fast, like it got yanked back into someone's throat. Phil's eyes were wide. His mouth was slightly open. He looked distracted, like he'd been hypnotized. "What are you doing?" I hissed, because suddenly I didn't want to be loud anymore. I didn't know why. It was instinct. He lifted his finger to his lips. "Shoo." The laughter came again. Same exact pitch, same length, like someone had pressed a button. Then a blink. Deep between the trees, there was a light. Not like a flashlight beam. Not like headlights. Just a point of brightness that flicked on and off. Steady. Patient. It blinked with a rhythm that felt deliberate. Like it knew you were looking. Phil whispered, "It's a fairy." I should have laughed. I should have said, "Don't be stupid. It's probably someone's Christmas decoration or a hunter or whatever." But my throat went tight. Because Rule 6 existed. If you see a blinking light, wave and stay where you are. I will come to you. Why would Mom have a rule about blinking lights? And Rule 5. If you hear a bell or a jingle, you come inside. My stomach started doing slow, sick flips. "Phil," I said, trying to sound like I was in charge. "We're going back." Now, he didn't move. The jingle sounded again, a little louder, like it drifted closer through the trees. The giggle followed, and Phil took a step toward it. I yanked him back, so hard he stumbled. He snapped out of it just enough to glare at me. "Stop. Mom's gonna kill us," I said. "We're not going in there." He pointed, eyes shiny. Look, it's waving." I looked and my skin went cold for real. The light blinked, and in the brief moment it was on, I thought I saw something move around it. Not a person, something smaller, like a shape shifting behind a curtain. And yeah, I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like kid imagination. But here's the thing. Imagination doesn't sync up with rules your mom wrote on a bright orange paper, like she was trying to keep you alive. "Back," I said, and I grabbed his wrist again. I turned us away from the light, and that's when I realized I couldn't see our yard anymore. 1 second, I thought I knew exactly where we were, right at the edge, just past the last post. The next second, the snow looked untouched in every direction. The trees looked thicker, and the fence line had vanished like it had never existed. I spun slowly, trying to orient myself. Everything looked the same. Trunks, white ground, gray sky, 1,000 thin branches like fingers. Phil whispered, "Where's the house?" My mouth went dry. It's right there." But it wasn't. The jingles sounded again behind us, and the light blinked brighter, like it was pleased, like it had watched us turn around and get confused, and it was enjoying it. My heart started slamming so hard it hurt. "Okay," I said, more to myself than him. "Okay, we go straight. We go away from the light." "Mom," he whimpered. "I know." I snapped and immediately hated myself because he was 5 and cold and scared, and I was the only thing between him and whatever the hell that was. We started moving. The snow in the woods was deeper. It grabbed at our boots and slowed us down. Every step was loud. Crunch, 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 like we were announcing ourselves. Then branches cracking. Not from us, from somewhere else. A heavy snap, like someone stepping on dead limbs. Phil flinched. His hand clamped around my arm hard enough to hurt. What was that? I didn't answer because my brain had already supplied the worst options. Deer, person, bear, something else. The jingle stopped. That sudden silence was worse than the sound. The quiet felt like pressure, like the woods were holding their breath. Then another crack, closer. Rule 2 flashed in my head. If someone calls your name from the trees, you do not answer. I realized I'd been yelling his name. Loud, like an idiot. I lowered my voice to a whisper. "We hide." Phil shook his head fast. No, I'm cold." "I don't care," I whispered back, and my voice came out nasty because I was scared. "We hide." There was a bush nearby, half buried in snow, branches tangled thick enough to cover us if we crouched low. I dragged him behind it. The snow soaked through my knees immediately. Cold knifed into my skin. We crouched, trying not to breathe loud. You ever get that thing in winter where your nose runs just because it's cold, and you can't sniff too much because it sounds loud? That happened. I had snot freezing near my nostrils, and I couldn't wipe it. Phil's breathing was fast, panicky. I put my hand over his mouth for a second. Not hard, just enough to make him slow down, and he tried to bite me. I hissed, "Stop." He whispered, furious. "Let go." "Shut up," I whispered. And then I realized we were making noise, and I wanted to slap myself. The footsteps moved again. Slow, careful crunches in the snow. Not frantic animal movement. Not random. Measured, like someone walking while listening. Phil's eyes were huge, wet. He was shaking, and I could feel it through the sleeve of his jacket. My brain did this stupid movie thing. I remembered a scene where someone hides and eats snow so their breath doesn't fog. Kid logic, dumb logic, but panic makes you desperate. I scooped snow with my bare fingers and shoved it into my mouth. It tasted like dirt and old leaves. Bitter, like the forest floor. It wasn't clean, perfect snow. It was the snow that touched everything and collected all the dead rot beneath it. I gagged, but forced myself to swallow because I was convinced our breath was going to give us away. Phil stared at me like I was insane. I motioned for him to do it too, and he shook his head fast. The crunching footsteps got closer. Then, this is the part one still get chills about. The jingle came back, but not from deep in the woods. It came from somewhere near the footsteps. like whoever was walking had it. A soft little tink, 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 almost playful like it was being shaken gently. Phil's eyes flicked toward the sound, and his expression changed. Not fear, not panic, recognition, like his brain went blank and something inside him reached for it. He started to rise. I grabbed him hard by the back of his jacket and yanked him down. He made a little yelp. Instantly, the footsteps stopped. The jingle stopped mid-note. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. My heart was so loud I was sure it could be heard. Phil's face twisted. He whispered, angry and confused, "I want to see." "No. Imota." He tried to pull away. I squeezed him harder. He whispered, "Ow." I whispered back, "Quiet or we die." That's not a normal thing for an 8-year-old to think. I wasn't a dramatic kid. I wasn't obsessed with horror movies. But in that moment, something inside me was absolutely convinced that if we got found, it wouldn't be a lecture. It wouldn't be a "who are you" moment. It would be an ending. A branch snapped to our left, then to our right, like it was circling. Phil started crying silently, face scrunched, tears freezing on his cheeks. He tried to clamp his mouth shut, but the sobs kept pushing out. Rule 7 flashed. If Phil cries, you bring him to me. Yeah, cool. Great. How? I leaned close to his ear and whispered, "I need you to be tough. Just for 1 minute." He shook his head. His teeth chattered. The snow under my knees felt like it was burning. My legs were going numb. Then the jingle sounded again, right in front of us. Not loud, just present. Like someone stood just beyond the bush, shaking a tiny bell, waiting. Phil's eyes went unfocused again. His body leaned forward. Out of the only thing I could think of, I slapped his cheek. Not hard enough to hurt him bad, but hard enough to shock him. His eyes snapped to mine. He looked betrayed. He looked furious. I whispered, "Stay with me." A breathy sound came from outside the bush. Not words, not an animal snort, just a kind of exhale that didn't match a human rhythm. And then the bush rustled. Something pressed into it. Not a gentle touch. A shove. Branches creaked. Phil squeaked. I clamped my hand over his mouth again, and this time he didn't bite. I held my own breath until my chest hurt. The pressure on the bush eased. Then the footsteps moved away, slow crunches receding. For a moment, I thought maybe it left. Then the jingle came again, farther away, almost like it was testing. Try to see if we'd follow it out. Phil's head turned slightly, like a dog hearing a whistle. His whole body wanted to move toward it. I realized with this awful clarity that it didn't need to physically grab him. It could just call him, like it had some hook in his brain. That's when I made the decision I'm still not sure I'm proud of. Phil's yellow jacket was a fucking beacon. In all that gray and white, it screamed. If it was looking for him, the jacket would lead it right to us. And if it was looking for me, well, maybe it could have the jacket instead. I slowly slid my hands to the zipper of Phil's coat. He frowned, confused. I whispered, "Trust me." He mouthed no. I ignored him. I unzipped it as quietly as I could, which is impossible when you're 8 and your hands are numb and the zipper keeps snagging. The jingle sounded again, closer. I tugged the jacket off him. Underneath, he had a thick sweater, but still, he was instantly colder. His body shivered hard. He started to protest, and I grabbed his face gently, forced his eyes to mine, and whispered through clenched teeth, "If you scream, it will come back. Do you understand?" He went still. I took off my own coat next, hands shaking. The cold hit me like a punch. I shoved my coat onto Phil. It swallowed him. He looked like a tiny kid wearing an adult jacket, but it covered him, and it was dark, less visible. Then I did the part that makes me feel sick now, even though it probably saved us. I crawled out from the bush, low, moving like a crab, and I placed Phil's yellow jacket a few yards away in the open snow, propped awkwardly against a little mound so it looked like someone might have dropped it in a hurry. A stupid decoy, a kid's trick. Then I crawled back to Phil and whispered, "Run when I say." He whispered, voice trembling, "I'm cold." "I know," I whispered back. Just run." The jingle sounded again, very close to the decoy jacket. Tink, tink. A pause. Then a different sound, something tearing through snow, fast. The bush we'd been hiding in exploded, not for where we were, from a spot we'd just been. Branches snapped violently like a huge hand had grabbed the bush and ripped it apart. Phil screamed. I couldn't stop him. It burst out of him, and then a sound came out of the woods that I still hear in my nightmares. A scream of frustration. Not human, not animal. It was like something trying to imitate rage with the wrong mouth. I grabbed Phil and we ran. We tore through the snow, legs pumping, lungs burning. The woods blurred. Branches slapped my face. Snow flew up into my eyes. Phil stumbled, and I yanked him up so hard his arm jerked. Behind us, something moved. Fast. Heavy. It didn't crash blindly like a deer. It moved like it knew where the openings were. The jingle kept sounding, now manic like it was being shaken hard. Phil kept crying, breath turning into thick clouds. I remembered the stupid snow-eating trick and shoved snow into my own mouth again, trying to stop my breath fog, even though we were running and it made no fucking sense now. We didn't follow a path. There was no path, just trees and snow and that blinking light flickering ahead, sometimes like it was skipping between trunks. I realized, with horror, that the light wasn't behind us. It wasn't something we were running away from. It was ahead, too, like there was more than one, or like it could move. Phil's feet started dragging. He was 5. He was shorter. The snow hit his legs higher. He was exhausted. He started whining. I can't. Yes, you can, I shouted, and my voice cracked. We burst into a slightly open area where the trees thinned for a second, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw the fence line. The last post, the edge. Hope hit me so hard I almost cried. Then the world changed again. The fence wasn't there, just more trees. I stopped dead, confused, spinning, trying to find the yard, trying to find the porch light like Rule 1 said. But there was no porch light. There was nothing familiar. Phil crashed into me and fell. He started wailing now, full volume. He was past fear. He was just overwhelmed. Stop, I begged him, but he couldn't. The jingle stopped abruptly. That felt like someone turning their head toward us. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I'd puke. I hauled Phil up and tried to run again, but my legs were turning to rubber. The cold was working its way into my bones. My fingers felt like chunks of wood. My breath burned, and then I saw something that made me freeze. Tracks. Footprints in the snow. Big ones. Not kid footprints. Not deer tracks. Boots. Deep, heavy impressions. And the snow and the footprints looked weirdly compacted, like whoever made them was heavy. Too heavy. For a second, my kid brain thought, adult. Rescue. Thank God. Then I remembered Rule 4. If you drop a glove or a hat near the woods, leave it. You come get Mom. That rule wasn't about losing stuff. It was about not bending down, not turning your back, not focusing on the ground while something watched you. I grabbed Phil's wrist and tried to steer us away from the tracks. But Phil jerked toward them like they were a rope. His head turned. His eyes went unfocused again, and his mouth opened, and he said, soft and dreamy, Mom? My blood went cold, because it didn't sound like him asking. It sounded like him answering. Something, somewhere in the trees, made a sound like a breath again. A slow exhale that didn't belong to winter air. I yanked Phil hard enough that he cried out, and we ran sideways, away from the tracks. My legs gave out. Not like I tripped, like my body just decided it was done. Everything went white. Not a peaceful white. A violent, blank white that ate the trees and the sky and the snow until there was nothing. My teeth chattered so hard I thought they'd shatter. My throat felt raw. My arms wouldn't cooperate. I tried to move and nothing listened. I remember Phil's voice far away, screaming my name. Then that buzzing started. A constant buzzing like a swarm of insects inside my skull. I drifted in and out like I was underwater, like sound had turned thick. Somewhere in that white, I felt hands under my arms. I felt my body lifted. I remember the snow sounding different beneath us. Packed, loud, like we were on a harder path. And I remember looking down, barely able to keep my eyes open and seeing boots. Big boots. Dark, heavy winter boots stomping deep prints. Not my mom's boots. Not her shape. Not her gait. Just boots. Carrying me somewhere. The buzzing got louder. The last thing I remember before the white swallowed me again was the smell, wet wool, cold leather, and that same stupid, bright jingle, soft as a whisper like it was right by my ear. The white didn't fade like waking up from a nap. It tore open in pieces like my eyes were scraping through ice. I came back to sound first. Beeps. A wet cough somewhere in the room. A cart squealing on cheap wheels. Then the smell, bleach, plastic, this sour hospital air that never lets you forget where you are. My whole body hurt in a dumb, distant way. Like pain was too tired to fully show up. My teeth were still chattering even though I wasn't cold anymore, and my skin felt hot and prickly like I'd been wrapped in a sunburn. I tried to swallow, and my throat felt like sandpaper. Somebody said my name, and I opened my eyes to a ceiling made of panels with little brown stains in the corners. I remember thinking, even then, what kind of hospital has stained ceiling tiles? Then my mom leaned into view, like she'd been hovering just out of sight, waiting for me to blink. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair was a mess. She looked like she'd been crying hard and then wiping her face with her sleeve until it hurt. "Hey," she said. One word, but it cracked. I tried to speak, and nothing came out except a raspy croak. My tongue felt too big. She grabbed my hand like she was afraid I'd vanish again if she let go. Her fingers were cold. Her grip was too tight. I didn't complain. I couldn't. There was buzzing in my ears still. Not as loud as in the woods, but it was there like a mosquito trapped in a jar. I stared at her and tried to remember how I got here. My brain kept throwing up flashes, snow, branches, yellow, a point of light blinking like an eye, that stupid tinkling jingle. And boots. Big dark boots walking across packed snow. I tried to sit up and my body said no. My head spun and my stomach rolled. A nurse appeared on the other side of the bed, like she'd been waiting too. Older lady, hair in a tight bun, face like she'd seen every possible kind of mess a kid could get into. "Easy," she said firm. "You don't get to be brave right now. You stay down." My mom snapped. "He needs water." The nurse didn't even flinch. "He needs to not aspirate. He can have ice chips." In a minute, my mom's jaw clenched like she wanted to fight her. And I remember thinking, even through the fog, that my mom didn't get that angry unless she was scared. The nurse asked me questions in a calm voice like she was trying to coax a stray cat. "What's your name?" I whispered it. "How old are you?" 8. "What day is it?" I guessed and got it wrong. That made my mom's face pinch like she was trying not to cry again. The nurse nodded like that was normal. "Hypothermia. He's gonna be fuzzy. That's expected." That word, hypothermia, made my mom's hand clamp harder around mine. She looked away like she couldn't stand to look at me for a second. I glanced down and saw blankets tucked tight around me. My arms were mottled with little bruises where someone had grabbed me. There was an 4 taped to my hand. The tape pulled when I moved. "Where's Phil?" I rasped. My mom's eyes snapped back to me. "He's fine." That was too quick, too rehearsed. He's in another room," she added. "They warmed him up too." I tried to picture him. Yellow jacket, fur hood, his face wet with frozen tears. My mom wiped under her eye with the heel of her hand and then seemed to realize she was doing it and got mad at herself. A doctor came in, young guy, tired eyes, stubble like he'd been awake for 2 days. He talked to my mom like he was trying to keep her from jumping out a window. "He's stable," he said. "Temperature's coming up. We'll watch him for a few hours. The shaking can last. It's normal." My mom cut him off. "He passed out in the woods." The doctor nodded. "I know. There were." She started and then stopped. Her eyes flicked toward me, like she didn't want to say certain things in front of me. The doctor kept his voice level. "You said you found him close to the tree line." My mom's mouth tightened. "Yeah." "You're lucky," he said, and that word hit her like a slap. "Lucky." Like this was a coin toss. My mom stared at him. "Don't fucking say that." The doctor blinked, surprised, but he didn't argue. He just looked at the chart again and said, "Softer. If you had been later." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. When he left, my mom sat back in the chair and finally let her shoulders drop, like she'd been holding herself up by anger alone. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to my knuckles for a second, breathing hard. When she lifted her face again, she looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Not just fear, something else under it, like recognition. I whispered, "We got lost." "I know," she whispered back. "The ferry." I started because even with my brain on fire, Phil's words stuck. My mom's head snapped up. "Don't." I blinked. Phil said, "I don't care what he said," she cut in sharp. Then she took a breath like she realized she was snapping at a kid in a hospital bed, and her voice lowered. "Don't talk about that right now." That made the hair on my arms lift, because adults don't shut down fairy talk like that unless they've heard it before. I tried to remember, but my thoughts kept slipping. Hours passed in chunks. Someone brought ice chips. They melted too fast and tasted like nothing. My lips were cracked. My nose ran constantly. My whole body had that weak, sick feeling like I'd been wrung out and hung to dry. At some point, they wheeled me down the hall for something. X-ray, maybe? The hallway lights were too bright. Everything echoed. I caught glimpses through open doors. Old people sleeping, a kid with a broken arm, a nurse laughing quietly with another nurse like they were trying to remember what normal sounded like. I saw Phil for a second when they rolled me back. He was in a bed in a small room, wrapped up like a burrito in blankets. His hair stuck up in weird, sweaty spikes. He looked tiny and exhausted. His face was pale, but his eyes were awake. The second he saw me, he started crying again. Silent tears, mouth shaking, trying not to make noise like he still thought the woods could hear him. I lifted my hand weakly. He whispered hoarse, "You slapped me." Even in that moment, I almost laughed because that was such a Phil thing to focus on. "You try to go," I whispered. He frowned, like he didn't understand what I meant. Like he couldn't remember trying to stand up, trying to walk into the sound. He whispered, "It was pretty." My stomach tightened. "What was?" I asked. "The light," he said. It was like a toy, like it wanted me. My mom appeared behind the nurse pushing my bed, and her face changed when she heard that. Her whole body went rigid. She leaned down to Phil, and her voice went hard and low. "You do not talk about that. Do you understand?" Phil flinched, surprised. He nodded fast. My mom's eyes flicked to me. That same look, fear and recognition, like she just watched a match strike. They discharged us that afternoon because apparently kids bounce back faster than adults, and because the hospital wasn't trying to keep us if we didn't need to be there. I remember sitting in a wheelchair by the entrance while my mom argued with someone at the desk. "I'm not taking them home until you tell me what the hell happened," she said. The receptionist blinked like she'd been yelled at all day. "Ma'am, we're a hospital." "Nah, a kid doesn't just wander into the woods and almost die," my mom snapped. "Kids do that literally all the time," the receptionist said without thinking, and immediately regretted it when my mom's eyes went cold. My mom leaned in. "Not my kid." The receptionist swallowed. "The doctor said you should follow up with your pediatrician." My mom scoffed like she wanted to spit. We left anyway because what else do? You don't get to demand answers from a building. Outside, the air was brutally cold. The sky was already darkening even though it wasn't late. Snowbanks piled high along the road. The parking lot looked like a battlefield of plowed slush. My mom got us into the car like she was performing a drill. Seatbelts, blankets, heat blasting, so hot it made my cheeks sting. Phil sat quiet in the back seat, staring out the window with that blank look kids get when their brain is replaying something it can't fit into words. I kept trying to rewind my own memory, and it kept stopping at the same frames, jingle light boots. When we got home, the house felt weird, like it wasn't fully ours anymore. Like the woods had reached into it with cold fingers and left a mark. The first thing I saw when we stepped into the kitchen was that orange paper on the fridge. The rules. It was still there, held up by the same magnet. Like the house had been waiting with its mouth open. My mom stopped in front of it and stared like she was seeing it for the first time. Phil, in his tiny hoarse voice, whispered, Fairy. My mom spun on him. No. He flinched. But, no, she said again, louder. We don't say that word in this house. It turned into an argument in the dumbest way, because Phil was 5 and stubborn and scared, and he needed to put a label on what happened, and my mom needed to bury it under concrete. I saw it, Phil insisted. It was laughing. My mom slammed her palm on the counter so hard a spoon jumped. Stop. Phil started crying, frustrated now. You didn't see. My mom's face twisted. No, I didn't. And you don't get to pretend you know what you saw. I remember stepping between them like I could physically block the fight. Mom, I said, my voice still sounded scratchy and weak. I got him. I went after him. My mom's head whipped to me. Her eyes were glossy. Why did you go in there? I stared at the floor because I didn't have a good answer. Because the honest answer was because he walked in there like something was pulling him. I was going to get him out, I said. My mom's face softened for half a second. Then it hardened again, like she didn't trust softness right then. You do not go in there again, she said. Either of you. Ever. Phil sniffed. But the fairy. My mom grabbed his chin gently but firmly and made him look at her. Listen to me. There is no fairy. There is nothing good in those trees. If you hear a bell, if you see a light, if you think you hear my voice. She stopped, like she'd almost said too much. Phil's eyes widened at the phrase, hear my voice. Like that meant something to him. My mom swallowed and said, controlled, you come inside. You come to me. You don't go to it. Phil whispered, it sounded nice. My mom's face went dead. Yeah, she said, quiet and bitter. That's the point. That's when I realized this wasn't just a mom freaking out because her kids got lost. This was a mom recognizing a pattern. Later that night, when Phil finally fell asleep on the couch under 3 blankets, my mom sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee she didn't drink. She stared at the orange rules like she wanted to burn a hole through them. I sat across from her because I didn't want to be alone. The house creaked in the cold. The fridge hummed. Outside, wind dragged through the branches like someone brushing fingers along glass. I whispered, you wrote those rules like you knew. My mom didn't answer right away. I pushed because I was 8 and I didn't have the sense to let it go. Why is there a rule about bells? My mom's eyes flicked to the window, to the darkness outside. Then she said, because when I was a kid, a boy went missing. That made my stomach twist. From our neighborhood? She nodded, slow. From a place like this. She didn't look at me when she said it, like she was talking to the table. What happened? I asked. My mom took a long breath like it physically hurt. They said he wandered, she said. They always say that. They said he got lost. They said maybe he fell in a ditch. Maybe he got hypothermia. Maybe her mouth tightened. They found his hat. Just his hat. Right by the trees. Rule 4. If you drop a glove or a hat near the woods, leave it. I felt my skin prickle. My mom finally looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying now. She looked angry in a calm way that scared me more. I remember hearing something, she said. A little bell. Like Christmas. Like it wanted you to come see. My throat went dry. Did you? No, she snapped. Then her voice softened. No. My mom yanked me back by the collar. She slapped me hard enough to make my ears ring. And I hated her for it for years. She swallowed. And for a second she looked like she was back there, small, cold, staring into trees. Then she said, when you were born, I promised myself I'd never let you be that close. I whispered, but we were. Her jaw clenched. Yeah, I watched her fingers twitch against the mug. She was vibrating with contained rage. Mom, I said, and my voice shook. Who carried me? She blinked at me like she didn't understand the question. You did, I said, because that's what she told the doctors. Right? My mom's face tightened again. She stared at my hand like she could still feel my weight in it. Yeah, she said. I found you. I carried you. But I saw boots, I whispered. Big boots. My mom's eyes snapped up. What? In the woods, I said, and my heart started racing like I was back behind that bush. When I was out. I saw boots. They weren't yours. My mom went still. Completely still. Like the house had frozen with her. What do you mean they weren't mine? She asked. and her voice was too flat. "I know your boots," I said. "You have the ones with the zipper," and a little scuff on the toe. My mom's lips parted slightly. She didn't blink for a long time. Then she stood up so fast her chair scraped loud on the tile. The sound made Phil stir in his sleep on the couch. My mom walked to the front closet and yanked it open. Hangers rattled. Coats swung. She dug through boots at the bottom like she was searching for a weapon. Then she pulled out her winter boots and set them on the floor hard, like she was putting down evidence. They were medium-sized, dark brown, with a zipper. The toe did have a scuff. She stared at them like they could talk. Then she looked at me and said, "I carried you." Her voice cracked on the word carried, like she needed it to be true. I whispered, "Then why did I see?" "Because you were delirious," she snapped. But the way she said it wasn't confident. It was desperate. That night, I didn't sleep right. Every time I drifted off, I'd jerk awake with my heart pounding, sure I'd heard that tinkling jingle in the house, like a tiny bell shaking on the other side of a wall. At some point, I got up to pee, and I stood in the hallway, half asleep, staring at the dark window at the end of the hall. Snow reflected faint streetlight. The tree line was a black smear beyond the backyards. I swear to God I saw a blink. Not bright, not obvious, just a faint point of light that winked once between branches. I froze. Rule 6. If you see a blinking light, wave and stay where you are. I will come to you. My arm twitched like it wanted to lift. I didn't do it. I don't know if I deserve credit for that, or if I was just too scared. Instead, I went to my mom's room and shook her shoulder. "Mom," I whispered urgently. She sat up like she'd been sleeping with one eye open. "What?" I started. Her face changed instantly. Her eyes sharpened. "Where?" "The window," I whispered, like a light. My mom swung her legs out of bed and grabbed the baseball bat she kept by the nightstand. We didn't play baseball. She walked past me into the hallway like she was going to war. She didn't even put shoes on. She moved with this quiet fury that made my stomach tighten. She peered out the window for a long time. I watched her shoulders rise and fall slowly, like she was trying to control her breathing. "I don't see anything," she said finally. I stared too, straining my eyes until they hurt. Nothing, just snow and darkness and the suggestion of trees. "You probably saw a reflection," she said, but her voice sounded fake. I whispered, "I heard a..." My mom snapped her head toward me so hard I flinched. Her eyes burned into mine. "No," I swallowed. "No what?" "You don't say it," she said. "You don't describe it. You don't give it a shape." My skin crawled. Then she softened slightly, and the softness looked like it cost her something. "Go back to bed," she whispered. I did, but I lay awake listening to the house. The next morning, Mom acted like nothing happened. She made eggs. She laughed too loud at Phil's dumb joke. She kept glancing at the windows like she was checking for something. She also took the orange rules off the fridge and folded them carefully and put them in a drawer. That pissed me off in a kid way because it felt like she was removing the only instructions we had. "Why'd you take it down?" I asked. Mom didn't look at me. "Because I don't need you reading that like it's a game." It helped, I insisted. Mom finally looked at me. Her face was hard. "It didn't. We didn't go outside for days. School got canceled because of the snow. It was like the whole world paused. Streets weren't plowed right. The neighborhood kids stayed inside. Everything felt trapped under white. But inside our house, it didn't feel safe either." Phil started talking in his sleep. At first, it was just mumbling. Then it became words. "Pretty," he'd whisper. "I'm coming." My mom would shoot up from the couch, eyes wild, and rush to him, shaking him gently. "Phil," she'd hiss. "Phil, wake up." He'd whine and roll over and keep sleeping. I'd lie in bed listening and feeling like my stomach was full of rocks. One afternoon, Mom left to go to the store. She told me not to open the door for anyone. She told Phil to stay out of my room. She kissed both our foreheads like she was sealing us. The second her car backed out of the driveway, the house felt like it deflated. Phil wandered around with his blanket dragging behind him, looking bored and restless. I was sitting on the living room floor playing with some dumb action figures when the sound hit. Tink, tink. It wasn't loud. It was faint, like it was coming from far away through walls. I froze so hard my hands went numb. Phil's head lifted slowly, like a dog hearing something. The sound came again, a little faster this time. Tink, tink, tink. Phil's eyes went unfocused and his mouth parted slightly. Do you hear that? I whispered. Phil stood up. Phil, I said, and my voice came out too sharp. He didn't look at me. He walked toward the back door like he was on a string. Phil, I said louder, and my heartbeat started hammering. Stop. He reached for the doorknob. I leapt up and grabbed him around the waist. He fought me with this sudden weird strength, kicking, twisting. Let go. Let go. I want to see. No. I shouted, and the sound of my own voice in the quiet house made me flinch. The jingle outside stopped immediately, like it had been listening. Phil went limp in my arms, and then he started crying, angry crying now, furious that I'd ruined something for him. You're mean, he sobbed. I held him tight anyway, shaking. Mom said no. Phil screamed. Mom's not here. And that sentence made my blood run cold. Because, yeah, Mom wasn't here. And that's when it came. A voice. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a voice from outside, through the back door, muffled like it was speaking through snow. My name. Not shouted, not screamed. So like someone trying to sound calm and normal. Hey, it said soft. Come here. I went completely still. Because it wasn't my mom's voice. But it was close enough that my brain wanted to believe it. Rule 2 flashed so hard it was like the orange paper was on fire in my head. If someone calls your name from the trees, you do not answer. You come to the house. My mouth opened without permission. Phil stopped crying instantly. His eyes locked on the door like he'd been waiting for that voice. His face went blank. Mom, he whispered, hopeful. No, I whispered back, and I don't know if I was talking to him or to myself or to the thing outside. The voice came again, still soft, still calm. It's okay. Open the door. I couldn't breathe. Phil lifted his hand again toward the knob. I grabbed his wrist so hard he yelped. The voice outside changed. Not louder, just different. Like whatever was pretending got annoyed. Open it, it said, and the softness slipped just for a fraction, revealing something cold underneath. Phil started whining. I want to go. I dragged him away from the door, back toward the living room, both of us stumbling. My mind was screaming at me to run to the front door, to the neighbors, to anything. But then I heard something else. Footsteps, not on the porch, not on the driveway, in the snow right outside the back wall. Heavy crunches, slow and deliberate like someone pacing. My skin went icy. Phil started shaking again. He pressed his face into my side like he suddenly remembered fear. I whispered, stay quiet. The footsteps stopped. Then there was a soft tap on the door. Not knocking, not banging. A light tap, like a polite reminder. Talp, talp. Phil let out a tiny sob. I clamped my hand over his mouth. His tears soaked my fingers. Talp, talp. Then silence. I stood there holding him, both of us barely breathing, until the sound of a car in the driveway snapped me out of it. Mom was home. The second the front door opened, the pressure in the house changed. Like something retreated. Mom stepped inside, snow on her boots, bags in her hands. She took one look at my face, and the bags dropped from her fingers. What? She said, and it wasn't a question. I tried to talk, and my voice wouldn't work. My throat was a tight knot. Phil sobbed into my shirt. Mom crossed the room in 2 steps and grabbed us both, pulling us in against her like she could fuse us to her body. Did you hear it? I finally rasped. Mom went still. Her eyes narrowed. Hear what? I swallowed. The bell. My mom's face went pale in a way I didn't know faces could go pale. Like the color drained out of her skin all at once. She whispered, was it inside? No, I said fast. Outside. Mom's jaw clenched. She glanced at the back door, at the window above it. Her voice dropped to this low, lethal whisper. Did you open it? No, I said. Mom's shoulders sagged slightly, like she'd been holding a weight over her head. Then she stood up straight, set her bags down carefully like she was forcing herself to be calm, and went to the drawer where she'd put the orange rules. She pulled them out with shaking hands, unfolded them, and slapped them back on the fridge with the magnet. Phil sniffed. It said open. Mom's head snapped to him. What said open? Phil's eyes widened. He hesitated. He glanced at me like he didn't want to get in trouble. Mom crouched in front of him and grabbed his shoulders, not gently. Phil, what said open? He whispered, Mom. A full body shiver ran through my mom. She let go of him like his sweater burned. She looked at me, eyes wide. Did you hear? It said my name? I whispered. My mom's mouth trembled. Then her expression hardened into something I can only describe as hatred. Not at us, at the woods, at whatever had tried to walk into our house through our ears. That night, my mom called someone. I don't know who. I heard her in the kitchen with the phone pressed to her ear, voice low and furious. I'm telling you, she said. There are tracks. A pause. No, she snapped. No, don't you fucking probably me. Another pause. I'm not hysterical, she said, and the word hysterical made her voice go sharp like a blade. I'm telling you something is happening behind my house. I crept in a hallway and listened. She said, boot prints. Big. And they don't match mine. That made my stomach drop. She paced. I could hear her bare feet on tile. I know what kids do, she said. This isn't that. Another pause. Then she said, quieter but more dangerous. If you don't take this seriously and something happens, I swear to God. She hung up. The phone slammed down. I crept back to my room and lay there listening to the wind and the house creaking like it was settling its bones. The next day, Mom went outside alone. She didn't let us come. She made us sit on the couch and put on cartoons too loud, like noise could keep the woods out. Through the front window, I watched her walk along the back fence line with a shovel. She looked small against all that snow. She kept stopping, bending, staring at the ground. When she came back inside, she didn't say anything for a long time. Her face was tight. Her eyes looked far away. Finally, I asked, did you find anything? Mom looked at me and said flat, I found prints. My throat tightened. From who? Mom's lips pressed together. I don't know. I swallowed. Were they big? She said, cutting me off. Too big. She stared at the floor like she wanted to punch through it. Then she said something that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. They go up to the fence, she whispered, and then they stop. I stared. Stop. Mom nodded slowly, like whoever was stood there, right at the edge. And then she gestured vaguely with her hand, like the rest of the sentence wouldn't fit into the room. Then there are no more, she finished. My mind tried to picture it. Someone walking through snow, leaving deep prints, reaching the fence line, and then what? Flying? Vanishing? Climbing without leaving marks? My mom said, it doesn't cross. What does that mean? I whispered. Mom looked at the orange rules on the fridge. Her eyes flicked to Rule 3, Rule 5, Rule 2. Then she said, it wants you to cross. After that, our life changed in small, ugly ways. Mom put bells on the doors. Little cheap jingle bells like you hang at Christmas, but she hung them on strings so they'd ring if anyone opened the door even an inch. It sounds cute until you live with it. Every time someone moved, the bells whispered. Every time the heat kicked on, they tapped. The sound made my stomach knot because it was too close to the thing outside. Phil started getting angry more than he used to. He'd throw tantrums, scream, punch walls with his tiny fists. Mom would snap back. They'd get into shouting matches that ended with Phil sobbing and Mom shutting herself in the bathroom to breathe. I started acting older than 8 because someone had to. I watched Phil constantly. I followed him like a shadow. I hated him for it sometimes and then hated myself because it wasn't his fault. And the woods just sat there behind the fence like it was patient. Sometimes on nights when Mom fell asleep on the couch, I'd hear a faint tinkling far away and my whole body would lock up. Sometimes I'd see a blink between branches and I'd feel my arm twitch like Rule 6 was a trap in my muscles. And sometimes, when Mom wasn't home, when she ran to the store or went to work or even just took a shower, Phil would get quiet and stare toward the back of the house like he was listening for a call. It wasn't constant. That would have been easier, honestly. If it was always there, you could fight it. It came in little doses, enough to make you doubt yourself, enough to make you think maybe you imagined it, like it was smart. Months passed. The snow melted. The ground turned to mud. Spring came and it felt wrong because everything looked normal again and we were still living like the world had teeth. Mom put up thicker curtains. She kept the porch lights on. She started locking the back door, even during the day. She stopped letting Phil play outside unless she was sitting on the steps watching like a guard dog. She stopped sleeping well. You could see it in her face. She'd startle at tiny sounds. She'd snap at us and then apologize too fast. She'd drink coffee at midnight, like she was afraid of falling asleep. Once, I found her standing in front of the closet, holding her boots, staring at them like they were a crime scene. "What are you doing?" I asked. She jumped like I'd shouted. "Nothing," she said too quickly. I stared at the boots. "They're not that big." Mom's face went tight. "Go to your room." I didn't argue. I went, but I lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about the boots I'd seen under me in the woods. The heavy stomp, the deep prints, the smell of wet wool and cold leather. And the thing that kept scraping at me was this simple fact. If my mom found me unconscious at the tree line, how did I get there? Because in my memory, I didn't collapse at the edge. I collapsed deeper in. I remember trees on all sides. I remember the light ahead and behind. I remember the tracks. I remember the bush exploding. How did my body move from deep in the woods to the edge without me waking? My mom told a story like this. She went out and found Phil first. He was hidden, silent, like a statue, she said. He couldn't tell her where I was. He just pointed vaguely and cried. Then she ran deeper, calling my name until her throat hurt. She said the woods were too quiet, like sound got trapped. She said she heard branches snap. She said she heard that awful crushed snow sound under boots. And then she heard a thud near the edge, like a body hitting packed snow. Me. She said she found me face down, half buried, blue around the lips, my jacket gone. She said she flipped me over and my eyes were rolled back and I didn't respond. She said she screamed my name until her voice broke, and then she hoisted me up and carried me back, step by step, like her legs were going to give out. That's the version we told people. That's the version she clung to. But every time she told it, her eyes would flick away at one specific point. When she described the thud, like she didn't want to think about what made it. Like she didn't want to imagine something dropping me there. Years went by. We grew up. We moved houses eventually, farther from woods, because my mom couldn't stand being near trees that thick again. She never said that out loud, but you could see the way her shoulders loosened when there wasn't a dark line of forest behind the yard. Phil barely remembered the details. He remembered a pretty light and getting cold. He remembered me slapping him. He remembered Mom being angry. That's it. I remember more. Not because I wanted to, because my brain saved the wrong files. Sometimes I'd be in a quiet room and I'd hear a bell in the distance, someone's dog collar, a wind chime, and my whole body would go tight. Sometimes I'd see a blinking light in the dark, an LED on a router, a phone charger, and I'd get this stupid urge to stare at it until my eyes watered. And I kept remembering the orange paper. We still had it. Mom never threw it away. She folded it and kept it in a box of important documents like it was a birth certificate. I found it once when I was older, digging for something else, and I unfolded it with shaking hands. The ink had smeared a little at the edges, like someone had touched it with wet fingers. The orange had faded, but the rules were still there, blunt and simple. And in the corner, in smaller writing I hadn't noticed as a kid, she'd scribbled something like an afterthought. Not a rule, an operational note. If it gets one of them to look away from you, IT wins. That sentence hit me harder than any of the rules. Because of the hat story she told. Because of Rule 4. Because of Phil's yellow jacket. Because of my stupid snow-eating trick. Because the whole thing from the first jingle had been designed to make us focus on the wrong thing and step deeper. There's one more memory I didn't tell you yet, and I don't like it because it's the one that makes everything feel intentional. A few days after the hospital, when Mom was at work and my aunt was watching us, I snuck into the laundry room where Mom had dumped our wet clothes in a heap. I don't know why. Curiosity, I guess. Some kid part of me needed to touch the evidence. I found Phil's yellow jacket at the bottom of the pile, or what was left of it. The fabric was torn near the sleeve like something had grabbed it and pulled hard. Not clean rip, a jagged tear. And the white fur lining the hood was matted with dirty snow and something darker that might have been sap or might have been something else. But what stuck with me was the smell. It didn't smell like our house. It didn't smell like our detergent. It didn't even smell like the woods, like pine and mud. It smelled like cold metal and wet dog. And underneath that, faintly like someone had sprayed cheap perfume to cover rot, there was this sweet plastic smell like a toy aisle. Like the jingle had a scent. I dropped the jacket like it burned and washed my hands until my skin turned red. When I told my mom about it later, she didn't look surprised. She just looked tired. "That's why I wrote Rule 5, she said quietly. That was it. That was all she offered. We didn't go back. We didn't investigate. We didn't set traps like in movies. We didn't call ghost hunters or any of that bullshit. Because the truth is, when something scares you like that, you don't get brave. You get practical. You get small. You close doors. You move away. You do whatever you have to do to keep breathing. And my mom did keep us breathing, but she didn't come out of it clean. Even now, as an adult, I can see the moment it happened, like a crack in glass. She found her kids missing. She ran into those trees. She found her youngest first, silent and wrong, like he'd been paused. And then she went deeper and heard something walking out there with her. And then she heard a thud. And then she found me. And she carried me. That's the story she tells. Here's the part she doesn't say, but I think about all the time. When she found me, my jacket was gone. Phil's yellow jacket was gone too, because I'd left it as a decoy. Mom didn't know that. She didn't know we'd stripped it off and used it like bait. So when she picked me up and started dragging me out, how did she not notice another set of prints? How did she not see boots that didn't match hers? How did she not notice the snow under those boots was packed like a path? She didn't notice. She just didn't want to say it, because if she said it out loud, it would become real in a way she couldn't control. I finally asked her about it when I was 16. We were in the kitchen of the new house. No woods behind us, just a neighbor's fence and a stupid little patch of grass. It was summer. There were crickets outside. Normal sounds. I watched her take the trash out. She did it fast and came back inside fast like she was racing something. I said, "You still do that?" She froze with her hand on the door lock. "Do what?" she asked, but her voice was tight. "Rush," I said, like someone's gonna call you from the dark. Her shoulders rose and fell. "I don't know what you mean." I leaned against the counter, forcing myself not to look away. "Mom, those boots, were they yours?" Her whole body went still. That same stillness from the night in the hospital. She didn't turn around. She stared at the door like she could see through it. "I carried you," she said flat. "I know," I said. "I'm not asking if you carried me. I'm asking if you were the only one who did." Silence filled the kitchen. Then she said, quietly, like she was talking to herself, "I found Phil first." I nodded. "You told me." She swallowed. He couldn't talk. He just stared, like he didn't know who I was. My stomach tightened. I'd never heard her admit that part. She continued, voice shaky but controlled. I ran deeper. I was screaming your name. I couldn't hear my own voice. The snow was so loud under my boots. I waited. She whispered. I heard another set. My chest went tight. Another set of what? She exhaled slowly through her nose. Footsteps. I felt cold crawl up my arms, even though it was summer. "You never said that," I whispered. She finally turned and looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She looked furious, not at me, but at the memory. "I didn't want you to grow up believing the world is full of things like that," she said. I whispered, "But it is." Mom's mouth twisted. "Sometimes." I swallowed hard. Did you see it? Mom looked away. No, but the way she said no wasn't certain. Mom, I said, and my voice cracked like I was 8 again, who carried me to the edge. My mom's throat bobbed. She pressed her lips together like she was trying to keep something inside. Then she did something I'll never forget. She walked to the hall closet. She opened it. She reached in and pulled out her winter boots. She set them down on the floor. Then she went into her bedroom and came back with a shoebox. She opened it and pulled out a pair of boots I'd never seen before. Big black boots, thick soles, men's size, heavy, like work boots designed for deep snow. She stared at them for a long time before she said, voice barely above a whisper, these were by the fence. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grab the counter. What? I whispered. She swallowed. After, when the snow melted a little and I went out there, I found them half buried near the last post. Rule 3. Never go past the last fence post. They weren't yours, I whispered. My mom shook her head slowly. No, Dad, I asked, even though my dad wasn't around much and I didn't even want to drag him into this. Mom's eyes flashed. No, I stared at the boots like they were alive. They were empty, my mom whispered. There are no footprints leading away from them, just to them. My skin crawled. I looked at her, heart pounding. Why did you keep them? My mom's face tightened. Because I needed proof that I wasn't crazy. I whispered, did you tell anyone? She let out this bitter little laugh that had no humor in it. And say what? Hi, officer. Something with bells tried to lure my kids into the woods and left me a present. I couldn't argue. My mom stared at the boots and her eyes got distant. When I found you, she whispered, I didn't hear anything for a second. Just my own breathing. Just your weight. And then I heard that jingle. Very close. My stomach lurched. Mom continued, voice shaking now. And I smelled something, like plastic, like a toy. And I thought I was losing my mind. I thought it was hypothermia, adrenaline, panic, whatever. I was telling myself I was imagining it. She looked at me, eyes burning. Then I saw your jacket in the snow. I blinked. My jacket. She nodded slowly. Not on you. Just there, like someone dropped it at my feet. I felt my whole body go cold because I put my jacket on Phil. I'd been wearing a dinosaur sweatshirt. I hadn't dropped my jacket in the woods. So how could she see it in the snow near the edge? Unless something brought it there. Unless something was returning pieces. Mom whispered. I picked it up and I wanted to scream because I thought it meant you were close. And then I heard the thud, like you fell, right near the edge. She swallowed hard. And when I grabbed you, she said, your skin was so cold it didn't feel real. And for a second I thought I was too late. Her voice broke, and she pressed her fist against her mouth like she was trying not to sob. I stood there shaking, staring at those big black boots. And suddenly the memory from the woods snapped into sharper focus, like my brain had been waiting for permission to believe it. The boots I saw while I was being carried weren't her zipper boots. They were these. Big, heavy, too big, and the smell, wet leather, wet dog, plastic sweetness. It all fit together like a disgusting puzzle. I whispered, it carried me. My mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Don't, she hissed. I whispered, Mom, it carried me. Her eyes filled with tears finally. She looked exhausted, worn down. She whispered back, then why didn't it keep you? That question haunted me more than anything else. Because if it wanted us, if it lured us, if it tried to call us out of the house, why did it put me back? Why did it leave me at the edge? Why did it drop my jacket at her feet? Why did it leave boots like a calling card? The only answer I can live with is the ugliest one. It didn't want me then. It wanted my mom. It wanted her to cross that last fence post. It wanted her deep enough that she couldn't find her way back. And when she didn't, when she fought and dragged us out anyway, it punished her in the only way it could, by staying in her head, by making her look at trees differently for the rest of her life, by making her jump at bells, by making her rush back inside like the dark is a mouth. We never went back to that forest. Not once. Not as kids. Not as teens. Not later for closure. We moved, and the woods stayed where they were, doing whatever it does when no one's watching. But every now and then, my mom will be dozing on the couch, TV on low, and the house will be quiet. And I'll hear her jerk awake and whisper, "No," just that, like she heard something outside, like she heard her name said softly through snow. And I'll ask, "What?" And she'll look at me, eyes wide, and say, "Nothing," like admitting it gives it power. So yeah, that's the story. That's what happened when I was 8 and my brother was 5 and the streets were buried under snow and my mom thought she could let herself go inside for a minute. I used to tell it like this: I collapsed, my mom found me, my mom carried me, we got lucky. But I can't tell it that way anymore. Not honestly, because the boots I saw while I was being carried weren't hers. And the ones she found by the fence later, they were far too big.